Hello and welcome to another episode of the Opus Well Style podcast. My name is Iván Watanabe, here with my partner, Evan Wohl. Evan, what's going on? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. We didn't talk about it before. We had a pretty interesting night last night. Good for you, bad for me.
Yeah, let's go Red Sox. It was a nail biter at the end there, but I'm very excited about that finish.
I woke up my son when there was bases loaded with no outs. I went upstairs. I was like, "Come downstairs. You got to see this." That was a mistake. I should not have done that.
Oh man. Well, he'll have plenty of winning in his life as a Yankee fan. So,
Yeah.
It's all good.
Tonight's another one. We'll see.
For sure. Well, we're excited to have on today Michele Cho Dorado. Michele, how are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. Well, we're super excited to have you on today. Michele is an MD and sort of founder and owner of Bright Futures, Empowering Develop, Grow. And we're just really excited to have you on today. It's a particular topic for us that is, hits home, conversation that we often have internally with friends, with clients, just about, how do we educate our kids around money and finance and things that we're not getting sort of in a traditional education system, right? And so we're excited to have you on today to tell us a little bit more about what you're doing in that space, your organization, your background, and some of the things that you're doing and your books. We definitely have to talk about the books. So
yeah, of course.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, of course. Well, I agree with you. I think it's a very important topic, so I really appreciate you having me on just to highlight it. And, the reason I even got into this space is out of personal experience, actually. So as you mentioned, I'm an MD. I'm a pediatric gastroenterologist by training. And it wasn't until a few years back where I realized that I had received very little financial education. And despite going through so many years of school and training, and I was almost a decade into practice when I got married and had kids and made this realization that I really knew very little about any sort of like investments, or I didn't know what a Roth IRA was. And, I just kind of questioned, like, how did I not learn any of this stuff? Or I guess I didn't seek it out, but, I think it was an epiphany for me. And so I started going on my own personal financial education journey. And, once I went through that, it was a big light bulb moment for me with young kids at the time where I thought, you know what, I don't want my kids to be 40 before they learn what it means to make an investment or what it means to be smart with their money. And so that's kind of how my journey started. I started with writing one children's book, and it was really a project for my kids because I wanted to teach them, and they were toddlers at the time. And then what started out as a project for my kids just grew into a bigger mission and passion because I realized, this goes beyond just my own kids. I think that, all kids really need to learn this. And the more I got into it, the more I saw that, when you have a solid financial education in money, I think it translates to things outside of money. So I think, kids are learning vital world skills, life skills, when they have that kind of education, leadership, critical thinking, learning about kindness, empathy, and the list goes on, and we can dive into it more. But it's so important. And I think it's something that, it's not, like you said, not traditionally taught in school. So if your kids are not learning it from you as parents, then they may not learn it, or they'll learn from people outside of the home. And so it may not be in the way that you want.
Yeah. And when you're having conversations around, money and finance with kids, when do you start? When's a good time to start this conversation? When are they just sort of maybe too young to kind of understand, or how do you sort of relate it to them in a way where they can understand?
Yeah. And I think that's the misconception, is that you think that the kids have to be old enough to really comprehend and have a discussion about money, but it really starts very young. And so, my thought when I wrote the book was my kids at the time were 1 and 3, not old enough to even talk, my 1-year-old. And my thought was that I'm going to write a children's book. I'm reading them bedtime stories anyway. If I can expose them to the words in a fun way that we're doing on a routine basis, then them just hearing the words over time, it'll sink in, and then they'll recognize the words, they'll understand it more. And I'll share a story with you. As we got into personal finance and I started reading more, and my husband and I started investing, and we started investing in some real estate. And so we started taking our kids around with us we had some short-term rentals, and we would take them with us to our properties, and as we're doing rehab, and we called them our investment properties. And so, I personally didn't even know that word as a child, let alone, an adult. And my 5-year-old at the time was calling these homes our investment homes, and it was just kind of funny. And then my daughter, when she was 4, we have these little money management boxes for them, and one of the compartments is invest. And, because we talked just openly about the things that we're doing, she was putting a coin into the invest compartment once. And I asked her, what does it mean to invest? Not knowing what she was going to say. And she looked at me and she said, grow. And it just surprised me because even at 4, I don't expect that she actually knew what it meant to invest. But the fact that she was able to tie the word grow to invest, it just showed me that, kids are little sponges and they're hearing what's going on around them. And so I really believe that just exposing them to these words, they're going to understand it and pick it up much sooner than I did when I was younger.
That's it makes me laugh because I think about my household. And so, my wife's an anesthesiologist. And so every day she teaches my daughter, who's 3.5, a new medical word.
Yeah.
So apparently the other day she was teaching her, I don't know, sclera was a recent word, or, anesthesiologist was another word, or, she like, my daughter picks it up, very quickly, understands it, knows where her liver is. Like, it's very, very, very interesting. Right.
Yeah.
And then we asked her the other day, what does dad do? And she had no idea. She had like none. And apparently I'm not doing a great job, or not apparently, I am clearly not doing a great job of explaining to my daughter what it is that we do, how to save, what that means. So I'm excited to get the book, and I'm very excited to start with her, because I think you're very clear on this, that they are sponges, and starting early is important.
Yeah.
When I was when my kids were a little younger, they're still young, but I tell them I help people with their money, just to keep it real simple. And I was just trying to teach them about investing, which was probably like a year or 2 years ago. And I realized to a 4-year-old, I think at the time, it was hard to explain what investing is, because like I was like, had to explain what stock is, or a business is, or how do you grow like, you put money in and then it grows. Well, how? I was like, oh, all right, well, let's go like step by step. And it was harder than I was expecting to have them actually understand. And so I tried to like play games with them and do the whole, like, let's start a lemonade stand kind of thing. So they were into it, but it was harder than I was expecting, for sure.
Yeah. And you mentioned using games, and that's a great idea. We play Monopoly Junior in our house, and they love it. And despite the concepts of it, they pick it up pretty quickly. And, the idea of buying properties and renting them out and getting rent, and they love it, and they comprehend it, surprisingly pretty well. So, I think gamifying things and just talking openly, honestly, I think just being transparent in your communication. And, I'll share that that's the one thing that I lacked in my household growing up, and not out of any malintention. My parents were very loving and very well-intentioned, but they were in survival mode. They moved here from another country, were immigrants working really hard. And so I don't think it was really on their radar to teach us about what it means to like make an investment or manage money. I think they were just trying to survive. And they, I think really it was, again, well-meaning, but they didn't want us to worry about money. They wanted to let us know that we're taken care of. And the focus was much more on doing well in school and getting good grades, and don't get a job, just work hard and get into a good school. And that was all that was really important. And so while very well-meaning and well-intentioned, the end result was I went through like many years of school without ever really getting much of financial education, because it just really wasn't talked about.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing that I would really stress, is just talk about it.
Yeah, and I think that there's something particularly common about that in the medical space. We have deal with a number of different clients in the medical space, and there's a very common thread there of go to school, finish my training, head down. I don't really have enough space in my brain to do this during training, because there's so much, and there's so much exhaustion, and there's just a lot going on during that time until it's sort of like when they get that first attending contract, right? They're like, okay, now I can finally start to have this conversation. But now I'm in my early 30s.
Yeah.
I'm in my late 20s, early 30s having this conversation. Now I have to learn what a Roth IRA is. I have to understand what my employee benefits package looks like.
Yeah.
I don't even understand what this disability insurance thing is like that I need to get. It's like, it's all of these things that you now have to try to pick up at that particular time when, maybe we could be having these conversations at 2, 3, 4 years old and make them more commonplace in the household, right? So I love the idea.
Yeah, you really hit the nail on the head because there's so many layers to that about being a physician and being very, what I told myself was just being not smart with money. But when you're in training and working so hard and you're making very little money as a resident, right, in training. And so part of the stories, I guess I told myself back then was, well, I'm not making much anyway, so it's not like I have money to do anything with. And I just told myself I was bad with money. I just didn't think I knew what it, like, how to manage it, or like I said, I didn't know what an investment was, or the stock market just sound very like complex to me. And it sounds silly now to say, but that's what I told myself, and what you tell yourself, you believe, right? And so it was just out of sight, out of mind, just head down, work hard, get to the next thing, and don't ask questions. And, then years go by, and then, you mentioned, going from training to becoming an attending, you have a large jump in your salary. And so because doctors don't take the time to really understand how to manage money, then many times people find themselves in a predicament where they're going from making very little to making a lot, and then, subsequently make poor decisions based on that as well. They're not well equipped to handle their money properly. They, think they have to get the doctor car, the doctor house, and all these things. And so, you'd be surprised to hear that many doctors live paycheck to paycheck, and it's, because they're not well prepared.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because I think that there's this communal sense in the doctor community about, not this story of telling themselves that they're not great with money. So, but the only person I can trust is another physician because they know what I went through. They went through that training, right? They've gone through the other side. They know what my life is like. So I'm going to take whatever's working for them financially. I'm going to take that advice, and then I'm going to kind of like double down on that, right? And there's this, there's a lot of, I would say, financial myths that we kind of see in the medical field that kind of get passed amongst each other. And then you end up not seeing a lot of them grow their wealth the way they could, or have an entrepreneurial spirit, or go buy that real estate. But, they sort of stay in their lane. And so a lot of times we're having these conversations to get physicians to kind of think outside the box a little bit. So, I definitely see that. But again, the value here is hopefully preparing kids, regardless of what their occupation is going to be someday, around money and gamifying it. And I love the idea of the book. Tell us a little bit about the book. So the first book, was that the Mimi's Magical Money Earning Adventure? Which one was first?
Yeah, so actually the first one was Reach for the Stars.
Okay.
And so that was the story where I really just wanted to introduce all the different concepts of money. The basic concepts of money. So, Mimi is the character, and she wants to purchase something, but it's expensive. And so she has to find a way to earn the money herself. And so in the process, she starts a business, and then she grows the business, hires her brother, she invests money. She goes through all the different aspects of, giving, saving, earning, investing. And so it kind of teaches kids those words through a story format. And then each book after that is a focus on one specific concept. So Mimi's Magical Money Earning Adventure is a second book that's about different ways to earn money. The third book is Mimi's Dolphin Challenge, Saving for a Swim. So that's different ways to save. And then one that will be coming out shortly is The Wheels of Kindness. So that's about giving. And then I have another one coming out probably early next year on investing. And so,
very cool.
Yeah.
And who's Mimi?
So Mimi is the name actually came from my son's blanket. My son has a security blanket, and he calls it Mimi. And so that's the character. And then Dudley is her brother, who is my husband's childhood dog. And so every character has some meaning, in our family. And honestly, I wanted, I'm Asian. I wanted the characters to be Asian. I wanted my kids to see themselves in the character. And I think, people identify with stories, and it can shape what you tell yourself as well. And so I wanted them to see themselves in her and see that if, you know, if this little girl can have this big idea and do something, like start a business and grow it and do these, you know, amazing things that you wouldn't think you could do as a kid, that they have the capability of doing that as well. So yeah, that's kind of how it started.
What's the age range that you would say for the books?
So I would say like 3 to 10 or so. You know, at the younger ages, obviously it's meant for parents to be reading it to the kids at bedtime. And then, you know, my son's 8 and he's still he's reading it on his own now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And are there any other sort of things that, you know, you find maybe parents aren't doing or that they should be doing along with, you know, reading the books or ways to gamify, like any tricks that have worked for you?
Yeah, you know, honestly, as I've gotten more into this space, I've realized, and especially being around, you know, like high earning professionals like physicians, so many of us work so hard to build a better life for our kids, right? And we're always talking about, you know, leaving a legacy for our kids, or we talk about generational wealth and leaving an inheritance. And I think what I've realized is that, you know, what we need to know as parents is that leaving an inheritance is not about money. I think that it's really important that you pass on your family values and prepare them to be good stewards of money, because if you're amassing wealth and passing it and, you know, like creating trusts and, you know, doing all these things, and then your kid gets money and then they squander it, you know, what was the point of all that? Like, you really want to teach them what it means to create value. Like, earning money equates to creating value. It's not just about, you know, hoarding money and buying material things. And you probably know that statistic about, you know, like in wealthy families, 90% of wealth is gone by the third generation and 70% by the second generation. It's not because of poor investments, but because of poor preparation. And so, you know, just teaching families that, one, communicate about money, that's important. I mean, what wealthy families do well is talk about money. And then 2, you know, teach your kids what it means to create value and how to be good stewards of money. And, you know, I think that it's, again, like, what's the point of all of this if you're doing, like, getting all this money and passing it on and they don't know what to do with it, right? Or they don't handle it well. And so I think talking about money, being transparent, and I think, you know, just like giving kids responsibilities at home. I'm a big fan of creating like a home economy system where you give them opportunities to earn and practice at home, so that they have some responsibility. They are expected to do certain things, but they have the opportunities to earn, and then you teach them the tools to how to manage it on their own. So give them some agency. Yeah.
We've had other podcasts talk about just how to raise good kids that aren't, you know, that move in the world as pass on our values, right, as we would want them to. And one of the things that constantly comes up is chores, or just making sure that they have responsibility, that they can feel that they're adding to, you know, the value to the end, helping support the family.
Yeah.
So this question is maybe to both of you. How do you guys think of, like, I've got my kids have accounts that I've set up for them that they will receive in the future, and at one point the topic came up because I do like to talk to them about money. And they mentioned how that they don't have any money. And I forgot how they were asking about some specifics, but they did have they do have accounts. And I wasn't sure if I should say, well, you do have this investment account and you have a whole life insurance. I did mention it, but I didn't say like how much. And I'm not sure if I want, like, how much I want them to know yet. Right. Because I don't know, then I'm not sure. I'm just not sure how I feel about that. Whether they're going to go on the playground and talk about, you know, all the things that they didn't earn but they have, or I don't know. Like, what do you guys think about that?
I have thoughts. I'll let you answer first, Ivan.
Yeah. I think if you follow what Michele is saying, which I haven't done yet, so I'm just giving you my what comes to my gut. If you follow what Michele is saying, which is you give them the ability to understand and the agency to then take some action on it. Like, if you just gave it to them or told them what they have and then they don't understand what to do with it, what's the point?
Of course,
right? Yeah. But if you're giving them the tools to understand and then to potentially, like, do something with it because they have the skill set that they've, been helped with over time, they can only benefit from that.
I guess the
right?
question is like when, at what age do you think they should
I don't
be
think it,
more
I don't,
deep?
I wouldn't imagine it's a dead set age. It's more along the lines of their capabilities and like where they are with that. Cause I'm
maturity.
I'm going to make the flat out assumption. They always say girls are more advanced than boys. My daughter is like sharp. My little guy is just going to walk around with his shirt off. Like that's what he's going to do. So, my daughter can probably pick up, and understand things and manage those things and have more agency probably at a younger age than my little guy. But again, I'm making blanket assumptions here. He's 1.5, so maybe that's not fair. But that's my gut sense on it. And again, I'll let Michelle, the expert, talk on it. But that's just kind of where my head is at.
Yeah. So I agree with both of you guys. I think it's really important that kids have some healthy struggles, and I think it's important that they don't think that things are just going to come easy to them. Mm-hmm. And so, that's a big discussion that I have with a lot of people, with peers, where, they don't want their kids, or we don't want our kids growing up feeling entitled, that their, money's going to get passed on to them. And I've had some interesting conversations recently, and obviously this is individual to each family, but there are at least a few families who their level of wealth is pretty significant, where they have decided that they're not going to give their kids money like passed on, like an inheritance. They told them that, hey, this is what we're going to cover for you. We'll cover your college, any secondary education. But, beyond that, they need to work for it on their own. And so even if you hear about like Warren Buffett or some of the big players out there, they make these statements that they don't plan to pass money on to their kids. And I think that reason is very important, is because, they really want their kids to know what it means to have to work to achieve and not have just things passed on to them. So, it reminds me of that phrase where, hard times create strong people and easy times creates weak people. And so, how you would do that, I guess that's an individual discussion for, your family. But, just teaching kids that, one, nothing's owed to them. They still need to work hard. And then I guess how you implement that, whether it's through a trust or whatnot, and money gets divided up into them in a certain way down the line. I think it's teaching them those values early on. And yeah, I think a lot of it will be how they're taught and how to view that.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It's funny. I remember a comment that my high school roommate was pretty well off, and I remember his dad telling him that I'm rich, but you have no money. Yeah. You're broke, but I'm rich, and just kind of like very clearly, like I'm going to take care of certain things for you, but up to a certain extent, and the rest of it, like I worked hard for this. You have to work hard for these things, and you're right. Like we've had conversations with our partners and conversations with our clients, and it is a very it's a very important conversation to have, right, around not raising entitled kids, wanting to have kids that contribute to the world, creating wealth so that you can afford your kids the ability to like go do the things that they're passionate about, right? And I think that's another piece of it, but yeah, starting early is becoming more and more and more obvious to me, and I certainly haven't taken enough time yet to do so. But I guess that it's better late than never.
Yeah, that comment makes me laugh. Oh, sorry.
It's certainly not too late for you, Iván.
No.
Your kids are so young.
I know.
No, I was going to say that comment reminds me of an episode of The Cosby Show where, I don't know if you guys remember, but there's an episode where Vanessa comes home from school and she's being teased about being rich. And Dr. Huxtable is like, you're not rich. Your mother and I are rich. You're not,
yeah, exactly.
But I think, this discussion kind of lends to thinking about not just passing on, stewardship and values to our own kids in our immediate family, but even future thinking into the future generations, So we talk about creating generational wealth, at least for my husband and I, we don't think just about our kids, but we think about their kids and their kids and down the line, and how do we preserve that wealth and teach your kids to receive and then manage and grow what they're given, right? And so these are all, I don't know, kind of bigger discussions, I guess. But
From the you had mentioned one that was a gratitude wheel. Is that what you called it? One of the books about
Wheels of Kindness.
Wheels of Kindness. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that book. I'm curious how it's a little bit different from the others.
Okay, so yeah, that's the one that will be coming out later this year. So it's really about giving. So the concept of giving. And so it's the character Mimi, she kind of like teaches there's different ways to give. You can give money, you can give your time, resources. And so it kind of goes through a story highlighting those different things. But basically the main storyline is that she goes to I guess it's like an orphanage, and she sees that she makes friends with a little girl who, wants a bike, and there's only one bike at this whole orphanage, and so she wants to help raise money to donate a bike. And so then she ends up joining this like charity bike race and has to find ways to raise money. And so it kind of goes through the story of that. And then at the end, I won't give away the story, but it's a happy ending.
That's beautiful. That's awesome. Go ahead.
My daughter will sometimes express some anxiety around she's nervous or scared of something bad happening, and my wife and I have always tried to say, you live in this nice big beautiful home, you're surrounded by a family, like you have nothing to worry about. There's plenty of people around the world that that they're really they have it a lot more rougher than you. But it never quite seems to like have any impact, right? Like us just saying it versus actually seeing it,
Yeah.
I think is totally different, right? That's where like actually having them volunteer and going and
Yeah.
seeing what less fortunate people, like what their lives are like, experiencing it is different than, their parents just telling them what it's like or
Yeah,
how good she
yeah.
has it,
That's very true. And I think when you teach giving and when you're practicing it, you're helping the kids develop empathy and compassion. And Ivan, you mentioned gratitude. And I think that that's something, we, even as adults, like, I try to prime myself in each day, just trying to like remember what I'm thankful for, because it kind of primes your mind for your day. But even with our kids, if you can practice giving thanks and gratitude with them, then I think they're less likely to focus on what they don't have when they're remembering, what they're blessed with. And easier said than done, especially with little kids. But
Yeah.
just, practice.
Absolutely. It's funny. We were talking about. I think I posted recently on like my personal Instagram account, like a picture of my son and daughter in like Miami Dolphins uniforms, and I tagged
this was a good
tagged
one, yeah.
Angela Duckworth and wrote like, "This is how I teach my kids grit."
Yeah.
Being Miami Dolphins fans, because it's so painful. But really, it is something that in a financially fortunate household, trying to create this adversity or this, grit, basically, it's a strange challenge to have and to even like talk about out loud. But I do think the gratitude piece, the grit piece, the, sort of the agency and understanding the finance and having these conversations are things that, we're really working on for young children. So having these books as a resource is I'm incredibly grateful for that. And I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I'll just highlight, like with little kids, well, one, they're so unpredictable, and two, it's not like they get the lesson the first time you teach it, right? And
Yeah.
like we talk like it's so easy to teach these things to our kids, but the reality is that, many times it goes through one ear and out the other. And so I would just say it's practice, just, reinforcing it. And so, we do our best, right?
Absolutely.
I love what you said of just focusing on their vocabulary, just saying the words of investing and saving, like even if they don't get it the first time or 5 times,
Yeah.
and now having resources like your books, I think is awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Michele, as we kind of wrap up, are there any things that you think the audience should kind of take away from the conversation, or any things that you wanted to say that you haven't had an opportunity to say yet?
I think, a couple things. I would say, obviously, it's never too early to start. So even at toddler age, I think you can, expose them to the words, be transparent in your communication at home, and just show your kids what you're doing, how you're making decisions, talk out loud, because I think kids are going to do and follow what they see, not what they hear, right? If you just tell them, but you don't act on it yourself. So obviously being a role model at home. But on the flip side, I have parents who have older kids who are teenagers or young adults, and they feel like they've missed the boat. And I think that's not the case at all. I think it's never too late as well. So, I can attest to the fact that I learned all this stuff really late in life. And so, the best time is now. And so even as a parent, and you don't have to have it all together or have know everything to be able to teach your kids, you go with them. But I think that at any age, no matter what the age of your child, and no matter what stage you personally are in, as you learn, bring your kids with you and help them to learn. And I think even sharing your mistakes, financial mistakes or other mistakes, I think is a good teaching tool, because they can see that you're not perfect. And in entrepreneurship, we always talk about it's okay to fail, right? And so if they can see that you as their parent makes mistakes, but you get up and keep going, then that gives them permission to keep going when they make a mistake as well. So, and the last thing I'll say, sorry, maybe I'm saying more than just a few things, but
no, that's great.
Just asking questions. I think sometimes the best discussions come out of asking questions, really good questions. I think, kind of going back to doctors being very fixed-minded, we weren't really taught to think outside the box, and we're taught just to do the next thing. And, after school is residency, after residency is fellowship, and then you just keep following the path, don't ask questions. And that's the thing that I think my husband and I really do differently with our kids, is we encourage them to ask questions and say, it's okay to think differently. It's okay to think outside the box. And sometimes in asking those questions, great ideas are formed and great discussions are started, because you're asking questions. And so that's the one thing I would encourage.
I love it. Well, where can we find the books?
Yeah, so all the books are in hardcover form on my website, which is brightfuturesedg.com. And then they are also on Amazon as well.
Awesome. Yeah. And so we're definitely going to be getting a few copies. I think one of the things we'll offer up is for the first 10 people to either like or subscribe or comment back on any of our platforms where the podcast is going to be placed. We'll send you a copy of one of the books, and I'll be definitely ordering a copy for Mia and for awesome. Luca today. So I'm very, very excited about that. I think I'll give you some feedback. I'll let you know what they think about it. But
awesome.
But I'm very excited about it.
I'll add that I also created an activity book as well as question cards, just to spark the conversations. And that's something that we do at the dinner table, just ask questions and answer them. And so it sparks discussion.
Tell us about the question cards quickly before we jump off.
Yeah, so it's called Question Cards About Money for Kids. And so those are on Etsy as well as on my website as well. But, I don't know if you've ever seen those table topic question cards. Mm-hmm. So we had those and my kids loved them. And so we would do it, they would have fun just asking different questions, and it sparks conversations of all sorts. But I was, in making the books, I was I haven't seen any about money. And so I created question cards about money. And so they're, on gratitude and investing and budgeting and all the different topics.
Awesome.
And then an activity book I created as well, just kind of going through different, it more engaging activities for kids, just to find another way to, reinforce those lessons.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for all you're doing in the space, and thanks for coming on as our guest. We really, really appreciate it. I'm excited to sort of go on this journey with my kids and hopefully start, imparting some wisdom on them. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And to you, the listening audience, thanks for tuning in. Make sure to click subscribe below to be notified when we release our next podcast episode. And again, to the first 10 people to comment, we'll send you out a copy of a book, Michelle's book. And please go out there, start to buy them for your kids and friends and family. I think it'll be, we can change some conversations in some households. So it'll be very exciting. Thanks, everybody.